Hi, how's it going? Today we're going to be talking about maintaining your AR, especially if you got one, you just went out, the quarantine's going on, it's 2020, you went out and bought an AR and you've never seen one before, but you want to be able to maintain it and keep it running properly. These guys do take a little more work than the other guns out there. I know what you're thinking. Tate hates ARs. I do. But I believe they're a great gun when lubed properly and maintained. They work really good. So while we were out today, we were out shooting today, and we saw about 5 guns go down that were ARs. Okay, of course my minis just worked fine. But the main reason was lubing and cleaning and proper maintenance. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So we find the gun, we want to make sure, first off, real quick, when we're operating the guns, we want to put the magazine in, tap it, and tug on it. Okay, tap and tug. This is a little different. They tend to be there. We also don't want to fill these magazines all the way up. I usually run my magazines in my house, about 25 rounds in a 30, about 8 or 9 rounds in a 10 rounder, so that when I rack the gun, I'm not, running into that problem. So I'm going to tap, tug to make sure they work properly. So the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and check this guy and make sure it's safe. We're going to go ahead and pull back on the charging handle here, which is back here. Yours will probably not have this big giant charging handle here. We're going to pull all the way back. It's going to lock. We're going to push our charging handle forward. Once we do that, I actually usually like to take something, actually make sure nothing's in there. We had a guy with a stuck round in there today. Didn't even realize the whole time he's having troubles. And it was a round that was jammed in the chamber that wouldn't come out. Next, we're going to take out the magazine, make sure we're empty. Make sure we're empty here. The gun will not come apart unless you've dropped the bolt. So this little guy on this side is your bolt release. Hit that with the palm of your hand. That will send it forward and allow the gun to come apart. Okay, so we're going to go ahead, take the 2 little pins. There's a pin here and a pin there. We're going to go ahead and pull those pins out. Okay, these can be fairly tough. This particular gun has a really tough front pin. And we're going to go ahead and separate out the 2. Now for this part, we do not want anything lube-wise inside the buffer tube, which is all back here. There's a little pin in the front. We're going to hit that pin. We're going to slide out our buffer tube. We're going to wipe that guy all down, and we're going to wipe on the inside, especially if this is a brand new gun. We do not want lube inside that area of the bolt or of the buffer tube. There's no reason to have lube in there whatsoever. Now keep in mind, these are my opinions. You'll definitely want to check with your manufacturer, and I do not accept any responsibility for anything you're about to do here. So once you've done that, I take brake cleaner and I spray the inside of the gun because I want no lube in the bottom half of the gun. So once I've done that, we're all good to go there. We can set that guy off to the side. Next, we're going to roll the gun over. I'm going to take my charging handle again, open it up, and we're going to slide this back just about halfway. And then the bolt carrier group will come right out. We're going to set that off to the side. And then your charging handle will come off to the side. Once we've done that, now we want to sit here, and about every 500 rounds is when I clean the barrel of my gun. I don't clean it every single time. No reason to. I'm going to go ahead and get one of these brushes with the little bristles here. Now this front bolt gets in the, sorry, the dog is obviously found the mailman. So all these locking lugs right here on the front, that's what that is going to go into and clean those guys out. So once we've got that, we want to go ahead and clean that out real good, and we're just going to sweep the barrel with either a simple rod or something like that, just to make sure we've got it clean. Doesn't need a lot of work. I don't take a lot of time here. The other thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take my dirty old rag. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to wipe out the inside of the gun, make sure there's no gunk in here. These are heavily lubed guns, so they tend to have a little bit more dirt in this area when it comes down to it. So we throw that off to the side here. And we're going to make sure there's no parts broken in here, any brass that's fallen in here. Things like that are kind of ideas. And I look down here into the lugs and make sure there's no chips or cracks in any of those guys. Once I've done that, we're in pretty good shape. I can push on the forward assist and make sure that's working properly. Not the end of the world if it's not. Okay? I'm going to set this off to the side. The real work happens in the bolt carrier group. Okay? So we're going to go ahead, push it back. I use a little hook or a pair of those pliers. I'm going to pull out the firing pin, holder. This little guy right here. Why can I not think of the name of this right now? But it is basically a little Carter key that holds the firing pin in place. We're going to pull that guy out. That's going to allow the firing pin to drop out. I just tap it on the table and I wipe this guy down. Again, don't want any oil on this guy. We're going to go ahead. This little part right here, this is what holds the bolt in. And we're going to just twist that so it's long ways. So it's usually facing like this. We're going to twist it like this. And then we're going to extract it up and out. So once it's in the backwards position, so we'll have to push the bolt back, it will come out. This particular one is a real pain. And I don't know why this particular one has such a hard time coming out. But again, I'm going to wipe it down. So once I've got that wiped down, I can go ahead and pull out the bolt. Now, one thing I usually like to do before I do that is I'm going to test and make sure that it's not going to fall underneath its own weight. So if I was to do that and I was to put it in like that and it fell to the bottom, I'd know that my gas rings inside were bad. So once I've got it to this point right here, I set underneath its own weight, and if it will hold up, usually the gas rings are in good shape. I do recommend changing those every 3,000 rounds. They'll go an easy 5,000, but it's a good idea to change them at 3. That way you know if you ever need the gun, it's going to go into 2,000 rounds without a problem. So those are the gas rings on the back here. Watch one of our other videos, we're going to talk about that. At this point, we're going to take our firing pin, and there's the extractor here. We're going to sit there and we're going to push on the little pin. So we're going to squeeze it between our fingers. We're going to push the pin out, and that pin is going to drop right out when we push on it. You might have to put a little pressure on there and tap it out sometimes for when they're brand new, but usually they come out pretty good. We want to make sure the spring isn't broken, there's tension on there, and then we've looked underneath there. Now this particular one was just cleaned, so it usually will have, I had a little piece of brass that actually locked up underneath there. Gun was still working fine, but that's a good idea to change that every single time. Now once we've done that, cleaned it out, made sure it's in good shape, we're going to go ahead and put our pin back in. And again, that's a push on the pin and kind of twist it between your fingers a couple little times and it'll go right back in just fine. We're going to sit there, we're going to wipe this down, make sure there's nothing there. I'm going to check and make sure the extractor has tension on it so the extractor will work. So I really like a little hook tool here. It's a little AR cleaning tool. And I'm going to push on the extractor, or the ejector, and make sure, which is a little round guy here under spring tension, push on that, make sure it's in good shape. So those two, once they're good, we're going to go ahead, put a little lube on the areas where the gas rings are in the back here. You'll see two little shiny spots, and I just roll a little oil on there. That's going to go back in, and the extractor needs to face the side with the divot in your bolt. So I face it that way, I line it up where the hole goes in. I'm going to drop it back in, twist it. This little guy here, we're going to twist it until it's facing long ways again. So it starts here, faces this way. We're going to go ahead and drop in our firing pin. Once we've got our firing pin in place, there it goes, finally drops in. You'll see it like that. Just go ahead and drive it all the way home. Oh, whoops, we turned a little bit on us. So once it's all the way home like that, and we've heard it click all the way through, we're going to go ahead and put in our firing pin retaining clip. Push that guy back in. This is something I recommend having also, so make sure you have those. Springs for your ejector, gas rings, and firing pin clips, all those break and they all wear out. So I recommend replacing those. These are all like $2 parts a piece. Once I've got that in there, I've made sure that my firing pin, the firing pin didn't go all the way in. So it did not catch. So that's why we always check that and make sure we go in there and then we've got it caught before we say that it's all good to go. Because this can actually cause quite a little bit of problems when you do it if your firing pin retaining clip doesn't hold it in place. Flip it around a little bit, push it in, and then I go ahead and make sure that that does not come back out. So we want our firing pin not to be able to come back out and want it to stop. And then a lot of times what I'll do is push on it and make sure it's coming through the tip there to make sure it's got good, you know, vision there. I can see it. Once we've done that, we're gonna oil only 4 spots. There's one on top on either side of the gas port here, and then 2 others, and you'll see those will chrome up after a while. And we're gonna lube the living daylights out of them, okay? We want oil just running off those guys. This is a gun that tends to run wet really, really well, okay? Gonna take our ejector, slide our ejector in. It goes in and then falls into place. Push it about halfway in. Now here's the really important part. You've got to pull out your bolt for it to go in the gun. So we usually just whip it and that'll drop it in place. Slide it in the gun, push it all the way till it closes. Push your port there. Push your pins in. And like I said, this one in the front's a little tough. Push your back one in. Go ahead and rack your gun. Go ahead and pull the trigger. Make sure it fires. Go ahead and rack the gun one more time. Make sure the safety is working properly. Turn the safety off. Pull the trigger. Hold it. Rack it. Let it go. And let it out. Okay? Once you've done that, the gun is ready to be fired again. And you're all set. The gun is now working properly and you're ready to go. So please watch our other videos on this. We're also going to talk about replacing some parts here and making sure those parts are, you know, the clip, the gas rings, and the ejection spring. So that'll be our next video on ARs. So as always, have a great day, like and share, and we'll talk to you guys later.